For more than 4,000 years, everyone who wanted to know what was inside the Great Pyramid had to break into it. Napoleon's surveyors measured every angle of it and found nothing new. Colonel Howard Vyse blew holes through the stone with gunpowder in 1837 and stopped there for the next 180 years. Then a team of particle physicists, not archaeologists, pointed detectors built for cosmic radiation at the outside of the building instead. They found something nobody expected: the building nobody could see inside. The Great Pyramid of Giza, also called Khufu's Pyramid, was built during Egypt's 4th dynasty, around 2560 BC. It stood roughly 146.6 meters tall when it was finished, and stands about 138.5 meters today, after losing its outer casing stones, to weather and to builders who carried them away. Estimates put the number of blocks inside it at around 2.3 million. It is the only structure from the original 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, and it remained the tallest thing humans had ever built until the Eiffel Tower was finished in 1889. For all that size, the known interior is remarkably small. A descending passage, an ascending passage, a low room called the Queen's Chamber, the tall sloping corridor known as the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, and 5 stacked spaces above it that engineers call relieving chambers. Vyse reached those top chambers with explosives in 1837, and after that no new interior space was found for 180 years. The granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber was empty when it was opened, and Khufu's body has never been located anywhere. That much is settled fact, agreed on by nearly every Egyptologist who has studied the site. The real fighting starts the moment anyone asks what is inside the parts of the pyramid nobody has ever entered: the physicists who stopped digging. In October 2015, a project called ScanPyramids was launched by Cairo University, together with a French organization called the HIP Institute, short for Heritage Innovation Preservation, led by Mehdi Tayyoubi. The team was not made up of excavators. It brought in particle physicists from Nagoya University in Japan, from Japan's KEK laboratory, and from France's CEA research agency. Their tool was cosmic ray muon radiography. It works like this. Radiation from deep space constantly slams into the top of Earth's atmosphere and shatters into smaller particles called muons, which behave like very heavy electrons and pass straight through solid rock. They rain down on every square meter of the planet, day and night, without stopping. Place a detector under a building and count how many muons arrive from each direction. Where fewer muons than expected get through, there is more stone in the way. Where more get through than the maths predicts, there is less. It is effectively an X-ray of a mountain, taken using particles from space, without moving a single block or drilling a single hole. Nobody involved expected the technique to find anything of real significance. This was the most measured, most photographed, most surveyed building on Earth. The first results came back from film left sitting inside the Queen's Chamber, and they did not match the model of the pyramid the team had built, the reading that should not have been there. The findings were published in the journal Nature in November 2017. Above the Grand Gallery, in a section of the pyramid that no passage has ever reached, the detectors registered a large empty space. The team gave it a deliberately careful name, ScanPyramids Big Void, and a deliberately careful description. Its cross-section appeared comparable to the Grand Gallery itself. Its minimum length was estimated conservatively at about 30 meters, a figure later scans pushed upward toward 40. It was the first major internal structure identified inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. The detail that made the paper hard to dismiss was the repetition. The void was not found once. It was found 3 separate times, by 3 different detector technologies, analyzed by 3 independent groups. Nuclear emulsion films installed inside the Queen's Chamber picked it up first. Scintillator hodoscopes placed in the same room confirmed it. Gas detectors positioned outside the pyramid altogether confirmed it again, from a completely different angle. Within hours, the story ran worldwide, most of it under headlines describing a secret chamber, a hidden room, a lost burial vault. That excitement did not survive first contact with the people who study the building for a living. The argument over one word, the objection from Egyptologists, was never aimed at the physics. Nobody serious disputed that the detectors had measured something. The fight was over a single word in the coverage, and the word was chamber. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, publicly dismissed the significance of the finding, arguing that the core of the pyramid is full of irregular gaps left between roughly laid interior blocks, and that a gap in the stonework is not a room. Other specialists pointed out something the headlines had skipped entirely. The pyramid already contains 5 confirmed voids sitting directly above the king's chamber, and they exist for a purely structural reason: to spread the enormous weight of the stone above, away from the ceiling below. Those spaces are architecture, not secrets. The ScanPyramids team themselves had written in the Nature paper that there was no information about the intended purpose of the new void. Before moving on, if this kind of analysis is worth your time, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel enormously. The deeper limitation was in the method itself. Muon radiography measures density. It does not measure shape, it does not show walls, and it cannot detect what is or is not lying on a floor. And in all the years since 2017, no camera, no robot, and no person has ever been inside the big void. That gap between a measurement and a look inside is exactly where the next claim went badly wrong. The city that was never there. In March 2025, at a press conference held in Italy, a group led by Corrado Malanga of the University of Pisa, together with Filippo Biondi, described in coverage as linked to the University of Strathclyde, and Armando May, announced results from a different technology entirely. They said satellite synthetic aperture radar had revealed an enormous complex beneath the Pyramid of Khafre, the second largest at Giza. Their description included 8 cylindrical shafts descending 648 meters into the ground, stacked chambers near the base, and connecting tunnels running roughly 2 kilometers beneath the plateau. Social media converted this into an underground city within a day. The claim had not been peer-reviewed. Lawrence Conyers, a radar specialist at the University of Denver, who works on archaeological surveys, stated plainly that the technology cannot penetrate anywhere near that depth, and called the interpretation a huge exaggeration. Hawass called the claims baseless, and noted that no permits for such work had been issued at the site at all. One of the most widely shared images supporting the announcement, a clean cross-section of the pyramid, with the structures drawn inside it, was flagged by detection tools as almost certainly generated by artificial intelligence. The pattern is worth holding on to. A loud announcement made outside the journal system, followed by a fast collapse. But between those two stories sits the one case where a scan was actually tested against a camera, and the result is the part almost nobody reports. The one door they actually opened. The big void was not the only thing ScanPyramids detected. The same project found a second, much smaller anomaly, sitting just behind the Chevron stones on the pyramid's north face, between 17 and 23 meters above ground level. This one was shallow enough to reach. In February 2023, researchers threaded a medical endoscope through a narrow gap in the joints between 2 blocks and captured the first direct images ever taken of a sealed space inside the Great Pyramid. The results were published in Nature Communications. The corridor is roughly 9 meters long and about 2 meters by 2 meters in cross-section. What the camera actually showed was an empty stone passage. No artifacts, no inscriptions, no burial, no goods, no writing on the walls. The leading interpretation among specialists is that the corridor is a structural feature, built to take weight off the stonework above the pyramid's original entrance. This is the single most important fact in the entire story, and it cuts in a direction that suits nobody. The only ScanPyramids void that has ever actually been seen from the inside turned out to be architecture, exactly as the skeptics predicted. It also proved the detection method works. exactly as the Discovery team argued. Which leaves the big void in a strange position, because the data behind it is genuinely strong, and it supports two completely opposite conclusions at once. The same numbers, two opposite answers. The big void measurement is about as solid as remote detection gets. 3 detector types, 3 independent analyses, published in the highest tier journal in science. The problem is what the measurement actually returns. Muon radiography produces a map of density, not a map of geometry. A large region of low density is consistent with one continuous chamber 30 or 40 meters long. It is equally consistent with a chain of construction gaps left behind by builders working at speed. It is also consistent with something else entirely. Since 2007, the French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin has argued that the pyramid was built from the inside, using a spiral ramp running within the outer walls, and the big void has been cited both as support for that theory and as evidence against it, depending entirely on who is reading the same set of numbers. Both camps point at identical data and walk away with opposite conclusions. Neither can move any further without physical access, and physical access has been refused for decades. That is not a new situation at this site either. There is a long record of instruments finding something, permission being granted, and the result arriving as an anticlimax. 100 years of doors leading nowhere. In 1986, a French team used microgravimetry to measure tiny variations in the pull of gravity inside the pyramid, reported anomalies behind a corridor wall, and was permitted to drill. What they found was a cavity filled with sand. In 1993, the German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot named Upuaut-2 up one of the narrow shafts leading from the Queen's chamber, and at the top it found a limestone slab fitted with 2 corroded copper pins. The press immediately called it a door. In 2002, a National Geographic broadcast, watched live by an audience around the world, as a machine called the Pyramid Rover drilled through that slab and pushed a camera into the space behind it. Behind the door was another block. In 2011, the Jedi robot went further still, imaged red ochre markings believed to be builders' marks, and photographed the reverse side of the copper pins, and resolved nothing about what the shafts were for. Every one of these was introduced as a breakthrough. Every one of them ended at another sealed surface. Which makes the most recent announcement, and the way it was made, worth looking at carefully. The announcement made at a book fair. In November 2025, Zahi Hawass told an audience at the Sharjah International Book Fair that scanning work and remotely operated robots had identified an unknown structure deeper inside the pyramid. Coverage described a corridor roughly 30 meters long, ending at a sealed stone door, with a full reveal promised for 2026. It may be accurate. Nothing about it has been shown to be false. The structural problem is where it was said. It was announced from a stage at a book fair rather than in a journal. The underlying data has not been released for other teams to examine, and the specific pattern of announcing first and publishing later has already failed twice at this site within a decade. None of that makes the claim wrong. It means the claim has not yet been through the process that would settle it. And while everyone waits, the oldest argument about the building is still running, and it questions something far more basic than a corridor. The theory that says the name was faked. A long-running fringe claim holds that the red-painted cartouche naming Khufu, found in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, was forged by Howard Vyse himself in 1837 to justify the expense of his expedition. If that were true, the only inscription physically tying the largest pyramid on Earth to the pharaoh it is named after would be a fake. Supporters point to Vyse's need for a result and to the convenient timing of the discovery. The counter-evidence is hard. The painted marks sit in spaces that could only be entered after Vyse's own blasting opened them, some of them in positions that would be almost impossible to paint from inside the finished chamber. The marks follow the known conventions of 4th Dynasty work gang graffiti, found at other sites unconnected to Vyse, and in 2013, archaeologists working at Wadi al-Jarf on the Red Sea coast recovered a set of papyri, including the logbook of an official named Merer, documenting shipments of limestone to Giza during Khufu's reign. That does not fully kill every version of the forgery argument, since a determined skeptic can always question a single find. But it does mean the biggest and most repeated version of the theory now has a very hard piece of independent physical evidence standing directly in its way. What all of this actually adds up to. After the muon scans, the Nature paper, the endoscope through the north face, the radar claim that collapsed in a week, the robots, and nearly 2 centuries of drilling toward doors that opened onto more stone, nothing has ever been retrieved from the big void. Nobody has been inside it. The measurement behind it is real, and was reproduced 3 separate ways by 3 separate teams, which is more verification than most archaeological claims ever receive. The meaning of that measurement remains completely unclaimed, because the only sealed space at this site anyone has actually looked into turned out to be empty architecture, and the one that matters has never been opened at all. What the evidence supports is not a hidden chamber, and not a debunked myth either. It supports a building that keeps producing readings solid enough to publish in the best journal in science, and stays sealed tightly enough that not one of them has ever been confirmed by anything except another reading. If this kind of deep dive is something you want more of, subscribing costs nothing and keeps this channel digging up stories like it.